thank you guys for coming out. Let me turn this off. There we go. Thank you guys for coming out. I really appreciate it, especially those of you who got the invitation and came out, because those were a lot of handwritten invitations. I sent out 150 handwritten invitations, and I think I have 3 people here that came because of that. Now, I want to share that with you because what do you think that says about folks who vote? They're not. And I only sent the handwritten invitations out to folks who voted in the last 3 out of 4 or the last 4 out of 4 elections. So people do not pay attention to primaries. And in a state like South Carolina, it is absolutely essential that you vote in the primary, because the primary is who wins the general. Period. Full stop. So if you wait to vote in the general election, you don't get to really have a say in who is going to be the next person to represent you. So thank you so much for coming out here. I deeply appreciate it. And I'm happy to see that most of you, probably 90% of you, actually can vote for me because you are in my district. Couple of things. I am from South Carolina originally. I grew up in a little small town called Clover, South Carolina, about 3.5 hours away. Played softball and volleyball, got recruited to come here to play at Coastal Carolina under Jess Danley. And played softball, loved it, graduated, went to the military, served in the Navy, got out, and went into teaching. While I was teaching, I decided I wanted to teach overseas in the missionary field, so I went to South Korea. And while I was there, I met a young captain in the United States Army, and 18 months later, we were married. So we are coming up on 19 years this May, and we have a 16-year-old son who is 16 going on 30. You know how that works. So he should run for this seat because he knows way more than I do, even though I have a degree in both history, government, and economics and taught them for 28 years. We have some serious problems in our state. One of those I think everybody knows about is immigration. When I say immigration, I mean illegal immigration. That is to say, we have too many people coming across the border making their way into this state. Now, last Tuesday, I went to a meeting at a group called American Conservative Voices. And if you have any interest in going, I highly recommend it. They meet every other Tuesday at Friendly's. What is it? Is it North Myrtle Beach? Is that what it is? Yeah, it's in North Myrtle. But it's worth the drive. This past week, we had a gentleman there who came to speak. His name is David Hucks. There were other guys as well. But David came and shared some information that I think everybody here should be aware of. How many of you guys have ever heard of the Heritage Foundation? How about Jim DeMint? He used to be the senator here in South Carolina, and then he stepped down, and another guy became the senator, and his name is Tim Scott. So Tim Scott replaced Senator Jim DeMint. Senator Jim DeMint went on to be the president of the Heritage Foundation, and one of the things this organization did was they actually found out all of the phones that were being given to the illegals as they were coming across the border, supposedly to keep them in touch with the court system so that when their time came to determine whether or not they actually qualified for asylum, they could be located and brought and heard. And if they were, yes, you get asylum, or no, you got to go back. But we all know that's not happening because Joe Biden is essentially just go ahead, stay, you're good. So once they get here, they stay here. However, they found out all of the phone numbers and all of the individuals that were connected to these phones, and they tracked them using something called geo-tracking. If you're not familiar with geo-tracking, this is the same technology that our special forces groups used to track down Osama bin Laden. It's also the same technology they used to track down the folks who were there in D.C. at January 6th. That's why a lot of folks got arrested, because they found out their phone pinged in a particular area and they came, knock, 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 come with us. Yes, and 2,000 mules. Yes, that's how they used 2,000 mules. So what's interesting about that is they looked at where all of these illegal immigrants were going, and 65 to 70% of them were going to red Republican cities. We are a red Republican state. So you bet your bottom dollar that when you drive through these areas where you see all the construction, 90% of those folks don't speak a word of English because they're not here legally. When you go to the Walmart, you see all those guys in there with those little cars and they're zipping through. That's our tax dollars given to them for nothing in return other than maybe their vote when the Democrats figure out how to give them the illegal vote. My suggestion is that we follow suit with what Texas has already done. How many of you guys have been following what's happening in Texas with the border crisis? Now, I'm sure you're all aware that our president has basically erased everything that Trump put in place to prevent folks from coming across the border, certainly not in the numbers. Now, just a quick, we had flights. President Biden flew people from their country into the United States, 300,000 plus in 1 year. 300,000 is about what Trump had in all 4 years he was in office come across the border. We have a major problem. To that end, Texas said, listen, if you're not going to enforce the law that say you can't come into our country illegally, then we, the state of Texas, are going to start enforcing this law. And I'm sure you're aware, President Biden and his administration fought back and said you can't do that. Thankfully, the Supreme Court said, oh, yes, you can. So now that the Supreme Court has paved the way for Texas to do that, we in South Carolina need to take the same measures. And if you are here in the state of South Carolina illegally, we need to give you the option of going back to your country of origin or going to jail. You put them in jail, guess what they'll stop doing? They'll stop coming here. Because jail is, you may get 3 meals and a cot, but it's not exactly the lifestyle that you want when you talk about a gated community. That is the only way we're going to start stemming the tide of illegal immigration, is we stop making it easy for them to come, infiltrate our communities, and set up what looks like it's going to be a Democratic wave if they're able to push through legislation that allows illegals to vote in our elections. Now, I'm sure you're aware that there are certain states that have already put through legislation and cities that allow them. So we have to take a very strong stance, and that's one of the things that if I'm elected, I want to push forward a piece of legislation that says we have to get our state law enforcement agency, that's SLED, and our state troopers to go to the places where these folks are coming in on the buses and to the airports where they're coming in on the flights and stop them and turn them around and either send them back to their country or place of origin or put them in jail. Questions? Concerns?
I heard that there was some people being housed in here.
Yes, they're coming into Myrtle Beach. We're a red city. Absolutely, they're coming into this city without reservation. There's going to be more and more stories coming out about that. There's been several breaking stories. Now, there's been argument as to whether or not the pictures of the guys on the buses were illegals, or whether the story alleged when I heard Liz Calloway's radio show was that those were folks coming here to go to a Christmas presentation, but I saw that. Those individuals did not look like retirees. They looked like they were in their 30s. And by the way, the majority of people coming across the border illegally are aged 19 to 30. I don't know about you guys, but that's very alarming to me because that is military age. We should all be deeply concerned. Doesn't mean we need to give up. We have to be able to stand up and fight if we want to save our republic. So that's my position on immigration. I see that as our number one problem right now, illegal immigration. That is the number one concern in my mind. The second thing, and I don't think I have to really make this point very difficult for you guys to join me on this, infrastructure. And infrastructure is not just our roads, it's our schools, it's our hospitals, it's the electric grid. All of those things are falling far, far behind what we're seeing here with the amount of growth. I got a list of schools the other day, and virtually every school, with the exception, I would say about 75 to 80% of all the schools in Horry County are at or beyond capacity, which means we need more schools because the people with kids are still coming. So we need to be planning better. Our school board members need to do a better job of making plans for buying land to build the schools on. We need to make sure we have adequate funding to make sure our schools are going to be built. Because I tell you right now, my son goes to a private school, and I'm not ashamed of that. He goes to a private Christian school because I'm a retired public school teacher. I know what they teach in the public schools. And so I said, nope, the Lord has blessed me with the means to put my child in a private Christian school. Thank you. And so that's what we're doing. But for everybody else that doesn't have that ability, it's important that we have adequate schooling for our citizens. They're going to be the future of our state. They're going to be the folks who vote. And I was talking with this young man over here, and he was telling me that when he was here in Conway that he didn't really love his government teacher. He didn't have me, that's why. If you'd had me, you'd love government. He didn't have his government teacher. And so he didn't really, learn very much from her. But when he became an adult and a certain guy got elected, and I believe his name was Donald J. Trump, he learned about government. And he said, you know what, this is important information. And it is important. But it's important for our kids to learn this because we need to have young voters who are aware of what's going on and smart enough not to be fooled by the lies and the tricks of the enemy, because that's what's coming out right now. It's lies and tricks from the enemy. I don't know how many people here are Christian. I'm a Christian. I'm a devout Christian. I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, and I am so thankful that he died and saved a sinner like me. And I was thoroughly disgusted yesterday when our president took to the podium not to proclaim his faith as a Catholic, but rather to proclaim his ability as president to announce that we should all be looking at Trans Visibility Day. I think we've seen enough of Trans Visibility Day. Don't they get an entire month in June? How much more do they need? Why do we need to murky the waters on the holiest of days for Christians? That to me was appalling. But that wasn't enough for our president. He went one step further and said, hey, we're going to have an Easter egg event at the White House. You can decorate your eggs. However, you can't put any religious stuff on your eggs. So no crosses, no verses, nothing that depicts anything of faith would be allowed to go on those eggs on Easter. But I bet you money they could draw a pride flag. That'd be fine. They could draw a transgender flag. That'd be fine. We have got a serious problem when our government is violating the First Amendment rights of young children at the White House. You guys know what the First Amendment says? You have the freedom of, and you have the right to practice whatever. Right. So two of our most important rights were violated by the President of the United States at the White House. As far as I'm concerned, he's done so many things that should cause him to be impeached. It's beyond thought. Somebody else noted that how can a man who has been declared mentally incompetent to stand trial be competent to govern the country? Well, I would like to know that answer myself. But here's the problem. We have a minor, I don't want to call it a supermajority, we have a super minority in the Congress right now. And a lot of the Republicans we have there have the spines of jellyfish. How about you? What's taking so long to impeach this man? Anybody else in here have a problem with saying the guy should be impeached? He should be gone. What's going on in our state and in our nation is a travesty, and it's because we don't have genuine Republican conservatives running. We get, at best, what some folks call squishy Republicans, but what I like to call Democrats. They're Democrats and they run as Republicans. They get elected because they trick the voters. Oh yeah, I'm a Republican. I'm for all those things you say you're for. And then you don't hear from them again after they get elected. Folks, I'm here to tell you, and I'm here to make you a promise. You're going to hear from me. You're probably going to hear a lot about me. I'm probably going to be the South Carolina version of MTG. You know who she is? Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia? Yeah, I'm probably going to be that version here in South Carolina because I'm going to be vocal. My mama will tell you right now, I've never been afraid to stand up and speak. I've got friends in here, and they'll attest to that. Edie, have I ever been shy? Chelsea? Mr. Gallman, have I ever been shy? No. Just like there was a lady sitting right there at that table that talked with me, and she said, well, you know, she was for Nikki Haley, and I said, well, I was not. Why? I said, because first of all, she had multiple affairs on her husband while he was deployed in a combat zone. Her response was, well, Trump had multiple affairs. I said, you know what? That's right, but none of his wives were in combat zones. You're talking to the wife of a veteran combat officer. You don't cheat on your husband while he's over there fighting to defend this nation. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Then she went further to say that she thought that Pete Buttigieg would make an excellent president. And at that point in time, I stood myself up and said, I think we're done here. Because there's no way I could ever endorse any Democrat for any office, period, full stop. Certainly not a man who didn't even bother to show up in East Palestine when you had hundreds and hundreds of people suffering from a train derailment. Where was he at? Paternity leave. I'm sorry. When my husband was in the military and I was having a baby, if he went into a combat zone, how many people think he would have gotten to come back for the baby? No, that's not how that works. You commit to serve the people of the United States, and you serve them first and foremost before you and even before your family. That's a tough choice, but it is a choice that you make. It's a choice that I made when I raised my hand as a Navy sailor and said, I will protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign but especially domestic. Because lately, it's not the guys on the outside we got to worry about, it's the ones on the inside. They are trying to destroy us from the inside. And so if you will get behind me and support me, tell your neighbors. If everybody in this room will tell 5 neighbors who vote, we need you to get behind Shannon and vote for her because she's going to do the right thing. And she's going to answer the phone when you call her. And she's going to respond to your text messages. And it's not going to be with photocopied PDF files that run for pages because she didn't really want to answer the question. I'm going to say to you, okay, how about we meet for coffee? How about we meet for lunch? And I'll go over that question that you have. That's representation. If the last time you spoke to your representative was a day they got you to vote for them, you don't have a person representing you and your interests. You have a person that's representing themselves and their own interest. Or maybe the interest of the chamber or somebody else, but they're not representing the interest of the people. I don't need money from the chamber. I don't want money from the chamber. I want to do what's right for the people of this district, and that's a promise I make you. Yes, sir. The primary is June 11th, so I need you to vote on June 11th. Now, there'll be 2 weeks of early voting that occurs, so you'll have an opportunity to vote all the way up to June 11th. That's the last day. And then, of course, the general election is November 5th. But as I mentioned, it is critical that you vote in the primary because the primary determines who's going to win in the general. I promise you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Tell everybody when the next event is.
Yes.
And then what Shannon just said, I think is really important. Everybody here knows somebody. I'm assuming that if you're here, you probably live in this district. And so what I would do is encourage you not only to tell your friends, but to help mobilize your friends and bring your friends to this next event that she's having. So she's going to have another event in a few weeks. That's an easy way to get your friends. If we can get your friend, if all of us can get 5 friends to come to the next event and convince them to get behind her, and then they go get 5 friends, and then we multiply, and that's how we do it. So I can't tell you how important it is to tell your neighbors and to bring your neighbors to the next event that Shannon has, so that we can multiply ourselves, because it's crazy, but the first one that gets 2,000 votes in this election is going to win this primary.
That's right.
We need 2,000 people, and we can multiply ourselves. There's 25 people here. If all 25 of us go get 5 more people,
That's 75 votes.
and then
Yeah.
those people go get 5 people. We're
Well, that's more than 75.
So I can't tell you how important that is. Bring those people to the next meeting that she has. She's going to have another meeting. Bring those people with you, because she can win this seat. I believe she can win this seat, and it really, it's up to us. We have to decide whether we want somebody that believes what we believe, that believes, the principles that we believe, the values that we believe. And I can tell you unequivocally, with absolute certainty, that somebody told me this earlier today. When somebody's work ethic and determination are co-mingled, that's the great equalizer. Okay, and whatever you're doing in life.
Yep.
And she's not going to be out of work.
Nope.
And her effort and her determination.
That's right. That's right.
John Wesley said it this way: if you catch on fire with enthusiasm, people will come for miles to watch you burn.
Yep.
She's enthusiastic about what she's doing. So if you can bring some people to the next meeting, and then those people can go get 5 more people, that's how we're going to do it. And it'll be the people's seat. This is about the people. This
Yes.
is about us.
Yes.
We need resident representative governments and still do it. I believe that. So
Thank you, John.
let's get these people out.
Thank you, John. Yes. So to that end, the next meeting is actually April 23rd. That's a Tuesday, same time, 6 to 8 p.m. I'm trying to do it when folks get off work, so they're not at work trying to get there. And it will be at 4 Point Sheraton beside the boathouse. 4 Point Sheraton over there by the boathouse. We'll have some food over there as well. The chef over there is really good, so I don't know exactly what we're going to put together. We're going to put on something. And I'd love to have you guys show up then, April 23rd. Yes, sir.
Can you speak a little to your opponent, how you're going to go after her conservative voting record, which is abysmal?
Yes.
As you know, I've reached out to her after
Yep.
that Czar vote.
Yep.
And if elected, would you be part of the Freedom Caucus?
If elected, I will be a part of the Freedom Caucus. I will not take the loyalty oath that is being pushed on the Republican caucus members. The loyalty oath includes the following, and this is all it needs. Anything else that's said is irrelevant when you get to this point. They require you not to endorse anyone else running for the Republican seat of an incumbent. It doesn't matter, and the question was asked, it doesn't matter if the incumbent is corrupt and facing actual legal charges. You can't support somebody else. Now, I'm sorry. That's a violation of my First Amendment right, and I'm going to get to pick and choose who I want to support, and I'm not going to sign away my rights because some jughead standing up there says, but I'm the Speaker of the House. I don't care, Merle Smith, who you are. You, sir, are violating people's rights, and it is not appropriate to tell people they can endorse whoever they want to endorse, so long as that candidate is, in fact, a Republican. Now, to your question about my opponent's voting record, these are all things you can look up. But her Freedom Index score, which looks at your votes and then gives you a score of 0 to 100 based on how constitutional your votes are. She scored a 17, folks. 17 out of 100. Now, that's bad. As a school teacher, that's bad. That is a really bad, that's a hard to pull up F. But it gets worse when I add something else to it. Anybody know who Todd Rutherford is? Mr. Rutherford is the minority leader of the Democratic Party in our state house. He scored 20. And there were multiple other Democrats who scored 25. They scored higher than a quote-unquote Republican who represents us. Next, let's take on the next one, CPAC. You guys all follow CPAC, I'm sure. That's your conservative PAC. They're the ones that go out and look at folks and say, is this individual conservative? Are they a liberal? Are they moderate? Same thing, 0 to 100. Now, I think they have a curve in their score, I'm going to be honest with you, because when I saw her score, I thought it was a little too high. But she had a 50 out of 100, but again, that's an F. That is not a conservative. But she'll get mailers sent out to you telling you how conservative she is. I'll share one more thing with you about her voting record. All of the Republicans, in fact, with the exception of the Freedom Caucus members, had an opportunity to pass an amendment that would prohibit doctors in the state of South Carolina from chemically or surgically castrating children as young as this little girl right here. And those 63 Republicans said, no, we don't want that. We want them to be able to surgically and chemically castrate them. So our representative was one of those folks that said, let's let that happen if it needs to happen. Riley Gaines, how many people know who Riley Gaines is? All right, very prominent swimmer, had her national championship stolen from her and given to a biological male. She took to Twitter, and with all of her followers, she took a picture that was sent to her from the Freedom Caucus of the board showing how every one of the Republicans voted. She took that screenshot, put it on there and said, this is not Southern California, this is South Carolina, and these Republicans voted to allow minor children to be chemically and surgically castrated with no repercussions to the doctors whatsoever. And her words were, primary them all. Okay, I accept your challenge, ma'am. I'm here to primary her today. The good news is, because she sent that out, guess what they all did? They tucked tails like the yellow cowards they are, and they went back and changed their vote. That's a great thing, but they should have never voted that way to start off with. I assure you, if I'd have been there, I wouldn't have had to change my vote. My vote would have been right to start off with. The second thing I'll note is, if you go back and look at her Facebook page, the last time she had anything to say to us, the district, was in February of 2022. 2 years ago. Guess when she put up her latest post? February of 2024. So for 2 years, she had nothing to say to you. And as this gentleman just mentioned, he reached out to her. Did she respond to you, AJ?
She did, but she didn't really give me a clear answer. She gave me a long diatribe about how we need to fix a broken system, and my answer to her was, how can you do that without giving the government more power? Because that's what we're doing.
Well, I had another constituent who I ran into while I was out door knocking and talking to folks, and she showed me the message that she'd gotten back when she asked the question, and she scrolled, and it was like a 5-minute scroll. And all it was screenshots that our representative had taken and sent to her. So she couldn't take the time to actually answer the question. She just sent her a whole bunch of homework and said, here, go read all this. Then she went to one of the meetings here, one of the so-called Republican meetings, and she was asked directly by a member of my district to explain why she was a co-sponsor on the Health Czar bill. She co-sponsored the bill. She didn't just sign on to it, she co-sponsored it. She couldn't answer the question. So another representative who was not a co-sponsor to the bill stood up and answered it for her. I don't know about you, but I don't want somebody else representing us that we didn't vote for. If our representative doesn't have the ability and the skill sets to answer a question on something she sponsored, then I don't want her in office. I want somebody who knows enough about a bill they signed on to that they can defend why they signed on to it. It was 220 pages, and my bet is she's never read page 1. She just took her marching orders from the leaders and said, I will get behind you because you told me to. How many people want that? Zero. Yeah. I don't want that. I want her to be able to answer the questions, and I want her to be able to be actually a representative of we the people and not of the people in Columbia or the people in the Myrtle Beach Chamber, who, by the way, aren't in our district. That's where she got a ton of her money, not from our district, but from there. So she may get more money than me, but I promise you this, she will not outwork me, she will not out-hustle me, and she will not outsmart me. That's a promise I'll make. Yes, ma'am.
I went to a meeting recently with her and a few more of the rhinos that we're up against. And she told me she votes the way they vote. So they tell her how to vote. She doesn't vote what I want. She votes for what she's told to vote. And she said that to a large group of people in GOP.
Yeah. And she's proud of that.
I want her to represent me if she doesn't even know how to vote.
Yeah. And she's proud of that. She is what we call the puppet, and somebody else is the puppet master. We have enough of that. We got a guy like that in the White House. His name is Barack Obama. Barack Obama. He's the puppet master. His name is Biden. So folks, I promise you, like I said, those are the things that I can guarantee you. Now, I've had people ask me, can you promise us we'll get I-73? No, I cannot. Because I-73 has to be done with federal dollars, and I have no control of the federal government whatsoever. I can't go up there and make Joe Biden let go of the purse strings and give us the funds. Okay? Am I opposed to it? Absolutely not. If we can get the federal dollars to do it, have at it. Let's do this thing. But we, the people of Horry County, don't have the funds to do that. We just don't have it. But now it's interesting. Some of you didn't know this. VW Scout came into South Carolina to build an electric vehicle manufacturing center. They're a German company. They're not Americans. They're certainly not South Carolinians. How many people in this room have a business or would like to have a business? Raise your hand. How many people in this room would love to have, I don't know, $100,000 free cash money? I just give it to you. You never got to pay it back. Okay? Now, our wonderful state legislator said, you know what? Let's give this German company $400 million in cash and another $1 billion in incentives to bring their manufacturing company to South Carolina. Wow. Wow. How about Tesla? Why didn't we just have Tesla come build a factory here? I have a small business. I would have loved to have had that kind of money. We could have helped thousands of South Carolinians. And the claim was, oh, it's going to bring jobs. Well, yeah, for other Germans.
Shannon Grady is the right person for the job because she loves South Carolina. She's traveled all around the world, lived in different places around the world through the military, during her military service. She's a Navy veteran. She's married to an Army veteran. She's a mother. She's a fighter. She's a veteran. She loves our country. She's taught history. She has a degree in history, which I think is really important. I think a lot of our representatives lack that. And she really reminds me, maybe not entirely in every single way, because she is definitely her own individual. She's a special person, but I think a lot about Dolly Madison during the War of 1812. The British were coming in and they were trying to burn down the White House, and there were so many documents and things. We didn't have printers in every office back then, you know. So there were documents and all kinds of paintings and records from our founding that people were burning and looting and all kinds of stuff. And Dolly Madison had her dress on. She was, you know, the first lady, and she ran back in there and she was saving documents. And that's Shannon. She may wear pearls and she may be beautiful and she may, you know, command a room. And she's, but aside from that, she's ready to go to war and she will run back into a burning building for our country. So she's the right choice.
No, BMW is, but no, this plant's going to be in Blythewood. Now, in Florence County, I believe it's Florence County, they're putting in an EV, electric battery manufacturing company. Now, folks, South Carolina does not have a lot of charging stations for electric vehicles. How many people here have been through a hurricane? Anybody been through a hurricane? How often is it that you lose your electricity in a hurricane? How would you like to be stranded here because you can't charge your car because you ain't got no electricity? I don't know about you, but that seems kind of stupid. How about we don't give away the golden goose for something else? I don't want a pig in a poke. I want to know what I'm getting. Now, I'm not opposed to the idea of having other types of vehicles. I'm not opposed to electric vehicles. In fact, I sell scooters that are electric scooters. But what I am opposed to is crony capitalism, and that is giving away our taxpayer money without asking us to anybody, but especially to a foreign national company. I'm highly opposed to that. We currently have an alleged $1.8 billion, windfall. They don't know where the money came from, but they found it, and woohoo! How many people in this room think we're ever going to see one penny of that money back in tax dollars to us? Don't hold your breath, because all they did is say, what can we buy now? So I can't wait to see how they mismanage the next windfall of money. But this can be stopped if we elect the right people to go to Columbia. People that actually have your interests at heart, not some other entity, and they're not up there listening to their cohorts who say you need to vote this way, you need to vote that way. I promise you that's not how Shannon rolls. Anybody in here that knows me, has known me for more than about a minute, knows that's not how I work. And I'll give you an example. I'll say this for the camera. There was a lady sitting right there who asked me who I was going to vote for, and I said it's a binary choice at this point in time. It's going to be Donald Trump because I'm not voting for Joe Biden. And she said, well, what do you think about Nikki Haley? And I said, I think Nikki Haley's not in the race anymore. But I wouldn't vote for Nikki Haley anyway because I'm not really a big fan of people that cheat on their spouses while they're in a combat zone. That's just me. So then she followed up by saying that she believed that Pete Buttigieg would make a great president. And at that point in time, folks, the conversation was basically over for me because I stood up and said, well, I don't think you and I are going to agree on much. Because I would never vote for a Democrat regardless of who he or she is. It's not going to happen. I became a Republican in 1984 when we had, anybody know who was president in 1984? History check. Ronald Reagan. I was a freshman in high school and I became a member of Teenage Republicans in 1984. I didn't get to vote for him in 84 or 88 because he was out, but I did get to vote for his vice president, who was not quite as great as I would have liked him to be. But I have never in my life voted for a Democrat, ever. But I have seen my opponent's voting record, and she voted for Obama, she voted for Hillary Clinton, and she voted, by her own admission, for Bernie Sanders. How many people in this room voted for any of those individuals? I didn't think so. So there's your difference, folks. When I tell you I'm a conservative Republican, I come with the bona fides to show you it's true. Questions? Thank you so much for coming out. Again, if you want to come out on the 23rd, bring a friend, bring a couple of friends. It'll be April 23rd, Tuesday, 6 to 8 p.m. at 4 Points by Sheraton, right next door to the boathouse. I think it's 101 Fantasy Harbor Way. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you. Go Gamecocks and NC State for the men. I'm Shannon Grady, and I approve this message.